What's up? I'm Adam.
And I'm Patrick.
Everyone's like, oh my gosh, you were watching. Oh, welcome everyone. So we are from Guy in a Cube. We are also PMs on the Power BI product team. So we work with the world's largest customers every day and learn all sorts of stuff about how people do bad things with Power BI. And then we try and fix it. And as part of that, this session is kind of about those big normal things that we talk about all the time. We're like a broken record, and we're just going to kind of highlight some of these things. And it's funny, like one of the things I think we're going to talk about today, we've had this question already 3 times this week, and we've only been talking with people since yesterday. And I'm like, this is like, it's in our thing. I'm like, this is why we're talking about it, right? Because these are things that people may not know about. You may know something a little bit about it, but we wanted to go through it. All right, so we're going to look at this query folding thing. How many people know what query folding is? Excellent. I'm going to blow your mind, hopefully. Then we're going to talk about star schema. We can't be on stage and not talk about a star schema. All right, how many people know what a star schema is? All right, some people not raising their hand. That's good.
Most people raise their hand.
Most did, but there were some that didn't.
So maybe we should skip that section.
No, because that's your section. All right, and then we'll round it off with some visualization stuff that we'll talk about and just some things to think about. I will start off by saying Patrick and I are not going to claim to be visual experts. Prathy's in the room. Go to her session. She's way better at this than we are. I don't know if Reed's in the room also. He's pretty good. Or Mara's in the room. She's great as well. I know she's here. So definitely when it comes to graphic design, those are the people to go talk to. But we will talk about things that we deal with that can affect Power BI and basically get you an ugly baby. So we want to make sure that it's not that. All right. So the big thing, if you walk away with anything today, the number one rule, don't break the fold.
Don't break the fold.
Don't break the fold. Right? So we need to talk about this. So for those that don't know what query folding is, I refer to query folding as query squishing. Right? And so with the steps that you do in Power Query, you want to transform your data, you want to massage it and make it feel good. All of those steps will go.
I'm hot.
Yeah, talk about query folding, you get all hot and bothered. So we take all of those steps and we push it into one like SQL statement or whatever your data source is that supports it. Going back to the source that has all those transformations for you. So this is the most optimal way to do it, and we don't want to break that fold. And so the idea here is that we do a transformation of some kind. We've got this awesome M statement that's there. And then I just remembered one thing I forgot to start on my machine. And then this will go, any of the steps you do in the UI equate to those steps in the M script. And then those end up going back to some T-SQL statement of some kind. That means we're folding, right? So we want to make sure that we maintain the fold going back to the database, because that means life is good. So some things to think about when we're dealing with query folding is we want to make sure that we do the basic things first before we do things that will potentially break the fold. An example of this was I had a customer, they came up to me and they said, well, look, we're doing something, this thing is really slow, and we went and looked at it, and I'm like, wait, you're doing this filter at the end. And they're like, yeah, we know we have a step that is breaking the fold right before it. And I'm like, do the filter before you broke the fold then. So if you know you're going to have something that will break the fold, then do everything that will fold before that step, right? So just make sure that you're doing it, because now instead of dealing with millions of rows, he filtered it down and now he's dealing with like 80,000 rows instead, and that's a much better thing to work with. So try and play around with where things are, and I'm going to show you something that you can use to determine where you broke the fold, which will be amazing. All right. And, yep. All right. So let's take a look at, let's go to, enough of all this talking, you know how we like to do it? Let's go to my machine. I didn't know where you went.
I say that this morning.
You like went behind me. Yeah, you didn't say it this morning. All right, so I'm going to actually do this inside of Power BI data flows. How many people use data flows?
No.
How many people are really happy with data flows? Yeah, less hands. That's all right. So what I'm going to do here, though, let's go into the data flow. Oh, and while I'm thinking about it, I forgot to start Zoom it.
Thank you.
Hold, please. All right. Got to make sure I got that. Okay, so let's go in, and what I'm going to do is edit. So I'm using Power BI data flows because of the fact of Power Query Online. There's some capabilities inside of Power Query Online that I wish were in Power BI Desktop. I'm told that at some point they will come to Power BI Desktop. I'm patiently waiting for that. I'm not patiently waiting for it. But I really cannot wait for them to be in Power BI Desktop. So the first thing here I'm going to look at that I really want, get rid of that. If we see, you'll see this next to the steps. It's green and it has the database. This is in Power Query Online. It is not in Power BI Desktop. These are your query folding indicators. So right now, this means everything is folding. It's perfectly fine, right? So let's see if we can break the fold. So I am going to do a merge query. And what I'm going to do is I've got a colors table, and I want to filter down the colors on this item. So I'm going to merge them together and do kind of a join, right? That should work, right, Patrick?
Mm-mm.
All right.
It's not going to work.
And let's see. What happened? Oh, yep. Oh, continue. It was complaining because it was different sources. That one actually worked. But it didn't actually filter. I did the wrong. Every time I do the wrong one.
Jeez, man.
Hang on. Do it again. So let me choose the other direction. Let's do the right. There we go. There we go. That's what I wanted to see. So right now, we broke the fold. So we see this red indicator, right? So I know that that's where I broke the fold. But wait, there's more. Do what? No. We all talk. This is amazing. So another thing you'll see if I right-click on that step, you'll see here that it says View Data Source Query is grayed out, right? And so if this was folding, I'd be able to click on that and I'd see the actual T-SQL statement that's going back to the data source. Now, I will say generally, if this is grayed out, don't treat that as 100% it's not folding, right? So it could potentially be a false positive, but it's a good indicator that it might not be folding. We also have the indicator that's telling us it's not folding. But what I want to point you to is this View Query Plan. How many people have used View Query Plan in data flows? Nobody. All right, this is where I'm going to blow your mind. All right, you're like, what is this? What is this? It's a query plan for Power Query. All right, what is going on here? So we're going to go from the right side. Let me see if I do this right. Nope. We're going to go from the right side and go to the left, right? That's how we're reading this. So my starting point is this guy right here, my SQL database. One thing to pay attention here is you see this remote, and then you see buffering, or you see streaming. Remote means that we're pushing it back to the source. So that means it's folding. We're good. If you see buffering or streaming, that means we're doing it on the Power Query side, which means we didn't go back to the source. So right away, we can tell that our problem is right here, right? So we did something that broke the fold. So what we want, hopefully, to see would be basically just these. We want to see that view native query, because that native query is going to be the push back to the source. So the problem here is I've got one table that's coming from SQL, but my other item is coming from a CSV file, right? So it's not SQL. So like, how do you fold that? And all I'm trying to do is just basically do a where clause on this to filter things out. So let's see if we can do this a different way. So I'm going to close that. Let's get rid of that step that broke the fold. If I come back to my colors table, one thing I'm going to do, let's see if we can do, all right. So I'm going to right click on my color table, and instead I'm going to say drill down. This makes it a list instead of a table. Does anyone know where I'm going with this? I know Patrick does. This is amazing. All right, so we made this a list. Now instead of doing the merge, which I always try and avoid a merge or append, what I'm going to do is come to the filter on the color table. I'm going to go to text filters, and I'm going to say in. And now I have an option here that says select a query. So I'm going to use the colors query to filter down my products table. What do you think that's going to do, Patrick?
It's going to fold.
Is it going to fold? How many people think this will fold? Of course it's going to fold. That's why I'm showing it. All right, so we're going to say the colors. Here we go.
Boom.
Bam. It folds, but wait, watch what it did. So if I go to View Data Source Query, it stuck it in the where clause as an in.
Beautiful.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
So I'm taking the CSV file and I'm saying just add it to the where clause just by using an in statement because of a list instead of just doing the normal query and let's go merge, right?
It's pretty good.
Cool.
It's pretty
All
good.
right. So now if we go look at the query plan for this,
It should be much simpler, right?
it should be very simpler. Look at that. Bam. That's it.
I'm impressed.
We're folding. That's what we want to see.
All right.
All right. How many people are going to go use that query plan now? Yeah, everybody get your hands up.
But Adam, I have a question.
Yeah,
This doesn't work in Power BI Desktop.
it doesn't.
So how do I get my queries
All
back
right.
to Power BI Desktop?
Right, because our goal, you're probably doing this in Power BI Desktop.
Yeah,
So,
'cause I don't use data flows.
so you got two options.
Okay.
You could save the data flow and then just import it into Power BI Desktop.
I'm not doing that.
You don't want to do that.
I don't want to do that.
All right.
I don't want to do that.
So what you could do is you could actually just copy the query itself. So I could just say right-click and copy,
Yeah?
and then paste it into Power BI Desktop.
And it's going to just work.
Do you want to see it?
I do.
Oh, okay. All right.
We got time.
All right, so I'm going to copy that. Let's go over to one of my files here. Let's go to transform data. All right, and I already have a product item in here, so ignore these. Don't worry about that. But watch what happens when I paste.
What the French? Oh, and it got the dependency.
It added both. It added the dependency, even though I did the copy on the products. Now, the colors is saying, look, I'm not sure what to do here because I'm putting it in a different context and I
Yeah.
need to tell it where the file is. Because I picked that it came from OneDrive in the
Yeah.
cloud. So it's like, wait a second, I don't. So you may have to fix up the file path to make sure it gets to the right spot. But bam, I just copied it from
Nice.
data flows. Now I'm doing all the cool stuff, making sure everything works, and then I'm bringing it into Power BI Desktop and I'm done. Right?
Nice.
That's
Nice.
cool. All right.
I like it.
I'm going to delete that though because
Yeah.
doesn't need to be there. Okay, so that's the first one. Let's do one more.
That's good.
Let's do one more. All right, let's get out of that. Discard. Close. All right, this one. So what I'm doing here is I actually have, how many people actually when you're going and doing an operation in Power BI Desktop, if you're getting from SQL Server, you expand the advanced and you hand type in your query. It's okay. You can, yeah, all right. We got a brave soul in the back raising their hand. Okay, a couple people are raising. It's okay. You raise your hand. So that's what's called using a native query, right? And that will break the fold. And so if you're doing that, please put all of your transformations in that T-SQL statement that you're writing. Don't do transformations after that point. So what we can see here is an example of that, where I'm in here and I did just that, and you can see everything after the source,
It's broken.
which is the native query, is broken. So it's not going to fold, right? So anything I'm doing after that, it's a heavy operation. It's going to potentially be slow on the Power BI side. And so if I look at the view query plan on this, it takes a second,
One remote.
right? Look at all these. Look at all that. Oh my gosh. All because I hand typed in that query because I know better than Power BI, right? So, I couldn't, my database administrator wasn't friendly enough to create me a view.
Nope.
And so I said, I got you, man. I'm just going to hand type my query.
Yep.
It's going to work. All right. So let's fix this up. Let's see what we can do here. So if I go to, I'm going to do a little advanced M. I know it's a little scary, but stay with me. So first thing I'm going to do, and I'll zoom in here in a second, I'm going to grab this query. Let's grab that, and I'm going to add a step in the front. Patrick's like, Adam, what are you doing? You're like hand typing in some M syntax. I'm like, yes.
Think you're Chris Webb, man.
That's it. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say statement equals query, no, value,
Dot query.
native query, and then I'm going to say source, query, null, and then enable folding equals true. Bam. And then I got to do a comma, and then fix up the statement pointer to fix it. All right. So what I did here is I just said, look, bring the query up here as in a variable so I can just reuse it, right? So it makes more sense. This is my connection information. And then this statement here is where the magic happens. So I'm saying this is the query, and then I have to include this enable folding equals true. This only works if you specify specifically the value.native query. That's the only place you can specify this enable folding equals true. This item, what it will do is take the hand type query that you're in and basically say, I want to wrap that, and then I'll do the transformations after that point. So we will then push back all of the transformations that you're doing while using your native query. Right? So that's good. The other thing to be aware of is that this is data source specific, so it doesn't work with every data source that we fold back to. All of the main data sources, so like SQL Server, Snowflake, those should work, but just be aware. I believe we've got a document out there that talks about which ones support it, but just it doesn't support every data source that we do folding with, so just be aware of that. If you're using SQL Server, you're good to go. All right, so let's see what happens. Assuming I typed everything correctly. Hold my breath. Oh, and then it's reevaluating. Look at that. Bam, folding. And I'm still using the native query. So let's see what the query looks like. The query is not, like Patrick's gonna cry a little bit on this query. Ooh. So we can see I was doing some converts on the dates, right? Those are folding because those are steps I did after the native query, so that's good. And if I come down, there's a nested query and then another nested query. So this is my actual native statement right there that got stuffed into a sub-select effectively.
Gotcha.
Right? And then we just do all the folding operations after that.
Nice.
Awesome. All right.
That's good.
So let's see what this query plan looks like.
Simple.
Hopefully it's better. Bam. That's what we want to see. All right. View query plan to help you not break the fold. Is that great?
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. Patrick, I don't know how you're going to top that. All right. So don't break the fold.
We talk about star schemas a lot. Adam and I do, right? Everybody's like, yes, yes, that's all you talk about is a star schema, star schema. Now, I'm going to preface this with...
Hang on. I'm a little paranoid right now. Can you hear him in the back okay? Okay, good, because I can barely hear him, and I'm standing right next to him.
You can't hear me.
Well, now they can because you're speaking loud.
Okay, so I'm going to preface this with, but I don't think my mic's on. It's on.
It's on. It's on. That's why I said I can't hear it.
Yeah, I can't hear it.
It's weird.
Okay.
It's weird.
And so the reason that we talk about these star schemas so much is because we're trying to show you how to future-proof your models. Sure, today you have one wide flat table. Maybe you came from another product that really enjoys these wide flat tables, this other product.
Starts with a T.
Starts with a T. And is owned with a company that starts with an S, by a company that starts with an S.
And it rhymes with P, and it stands for pool.
Okay, and so...
only a couple chuckles. The younger ones won't get that.
But today you get this flat table. You call your DBA up or whoever the person is that provides this data, and they give you this one flat CSV file with 800 columns in it.
800 columns.
True story.
True story.
Right? 800 columns. You load it up. It's only got 100,000 rows. It works today. Then tomorrow there's 1 million rows. Still works. The next day or the next year, it's 10 million rows in this model. And somebody calls you and says, this is not working. And then you call me and I go, because your baby's ugly.
And they tell Patrick it worked in that other product that started with a T, so it should work. It should just work in Power BI.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And I'm the person that just need to reveal to them that the baby's ugly. And you need to do something about this. And it's like, well, it was born that way. I can't fix it. I'm like, well, you got to do something, right? You should have picked a better mate, maybe. And so that's when we say, hey, maybe you can make this a star schema, okay? And so they go, what's this star schema, Patrick? So we know what a fact table is. Yes, right? We know what dimensions are. Even when we talk to people and we tell them.
We know what 29th normal form is.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
And we tell them, hey, you need to create this star schema. Then they come back to us and they have their dimensions and they have this fact table. And this fact table has strings in it. And this fact table has GUIDs in it. And this fact table has date time columns in it. And this fact table has a key column that's unique for every row. And we go, well, what'd you do? Well, you told me to create a fact table, Patrick. I go, that's not a fact table. It's an operational table. You just went to SAP or SQL Server or whatever it is, Dynamics, and copied that table in the Power BI with all the relationships. Well, yeah, you said make a star schema. There's no other tables on the edge. It looks just like this. But you got to clean things up. You got to clean things up a little bit, right? And I didn't know I had slides. And so we did a test. Adam and I did a test. And because somebody challenged us, and they said, hey, if I take your fancy star schema that you spend months designing, years designing, you hire this fancy data engineer to come in, and you got to pay him $325, or whatever it converts to pounds. You got to pay them all this money and design this. This is going to be faster. No, it's not going to be faster. So let's just refresh them. So what I did was I took AdventureWorks, I exploded it out. I think it was 500 million rows, I think I put in AdventureWorks. And I joined all the tables together in AdventureWorks.
And he cried after each click.
Right? I said, select star from fact internet sales, inner join, dim customer, inner join, dim promotion, inner join, this. All the columns that exist. And I made one big view out of them. And then I imported the schema, but I also imported the flat table, two separate models, true story. And then I ran a refresh. I didn't know what the next slide was, so I had to check. I didn't put these together. He just put them together a few minutes ago. I was taking a nap, and so stayed up late last night. And so we ran the refresh. I said, challenge accepted, people. I'm good with a challenge. We ran the refresh. Which one do you think was faster? Now you got to think. This one had several tables. That was just one very wide table. Which one do you think was faster? Which refresh do you think was faster? Obvious, duh, Patrick, right? We know you're talking about a star schema. But check this out. There's a guy that works with us named Phil Seamark. Phil is one of the smartest people I know. And he created this thing called Visualize Your Refresh. And you can go to dax.tips and you can download it. It's free. He gives it away. And I ran my refresh. It took 34 minutes to run the refresh over this flat table, right? And we were processing, 3,000 rows?
3,800.
About 4,000 rows per second. And I was like, what? That's not bad. It's not bad. 34 minutes. I got all night to refresh. We only refresh our data warehouse once a day. So after it refreshes, 34 minutes. But then I said, let's try the star schema. How much faster do you think the star schema was? Say it again? 20 minutes.
20 times.
20 times faster.
I don't know what the math is on that.
I think it's 10. Right. It took me 4 minutes. 4 minutes, I was processing 33,000 rows per second. Just by making me a star schema. If your refresh is slow, you probably have an ugly baby. You probably do merges and appends. You probably broke the fold. I didn't break the fold. This was just a view. I didn't do any transformations. I just connected to this view, scheduled a refresh, took 30-something minutes, and my heart was broken because I'm like, hey, it's SQL Server. SQL Server's fast.
Ooh.
But when I changed it to a star schema, we got some
I don't know what.
flickering.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I saw that Megan was doing that
Yeah.
too. I don't know.
And so it was so much faster. So the first tip, if you're using a flat table today, it may work today. But as your data grows, if you want to future-proof your models, if you want to protect them from that data growth, from additional columns being added to your model, be sure to just try to do a star schema, okay? It's not because we're saying, oh, do a star schema. That's not what we're saying. We're trying to tell you this is what you should do because there's so many advantages to doing it.
The other thing I tell people, because they're like, our data is really small, right? It doesn't matter if we don't do a star schema. The thing I will say is start practicing these habits now so you can start getting into the form of doing it. You understand how it works. So when you land that job where you're working on the trillion row data set, and those people do exist, you will go in there knowing what you're going to do and be successful in that role. So start practicing those, even if you feel it doesn't matter right now.
Yep. And so how many of you have heard of a VPAX file? Oh, we need way more hands than this. That's unfortunate. So whenever you design a model, a data set, data model, whatever you want to call it out, before you publish it, what are the steps you take? I just publish it, Patrick. I don't look at it. I don't see if it's optimal. I don't care if it performs. I'm done. It's time to go to the next model. Let them worry about it when the reports take a long time to run. I don't care if the reports are slow. I did my job, right? But Alberto, Marco, he works for us. I'm just not going to touch the table anymore.
I don't know. There's something wrong with the cable.
What's his name? DAX Studio guy.
Oh, Darren.
Darren. Darren, they created this beautiful tool called DAX Studio. If you've never used DAX Studio before, go to daxstudio.org. I'm not doing anything. I'm not even touching it.
It's not you. It's not you.
Maybe it's all the
the energy.
confidence and energy that I'm exuding that's causing this. Maybe that's what it is, right? Anyway.
It's the power of Power BI.
No, it's the power of Patrick.
Okay.
Right? Anyway, and so they made this beautiful tool. If you've never used this tool, go to daxstudio.org and download it. We have YouTube videos that explains how to get the VPAX file and do things with the VPAX file. Marco has a brilliant video explaining how to use it. But what we did was, someone said, hey, Patrick, can you look at my VPAX file? And I'm like, sure, I can look at it. My model's so big, and I think we're gonna have to upgrade to a new P1. We can't use Pro anymore. We gotta go to a P1, or we're on a P1, we need to go to a P5, something like that. Because they're so cheap, everything's so cheap, right? And so I said, well, let me take a look at it. Let me take a look. Oh, so it's not there. I thought you copied the path for me. God, I just can't depend on you. I just can't depend on you anymore these days. Jeez, you used to be
I did actually copy and paste.
Now that you've become a manager, you become so, I just can't depend on you anymore. Okay, I used to be able to depend on you so much before you became a manager. Okay, and so let me show you this. I have to show you this. Yeah, he was great, but now that he, went into management, he's just not that great anymore. Okay, so look at this column right here. All right. There's 537,000 rows in this table. Look at the next column, right? Look at the cardinality of these columns. Why do I have these columns in this table? I don't need them. Look what's the percentage of this database they take up. Look at this big dictionary that's built. And so we don't have time to go into all the details about this, and I won't say it. I'm gonna say it. Casper's gonna do a talk, a 20-minute talk on the engine, and he's gonna talk about this a little bit, so you should go to Casper's.
Talk about all of this.
Yeah, he's not gonna talk about all of this, but he's gonna talk about some of this stuff. You should go to Casper's session and check it out, okay? But a lot of times, people create these models, and they have these unnecessary columns, like key columns on your fact table, and they import them, and they take a tremendous amount of space in your model. If we take a look at the summary tab, and you look how big this model is, 6.84 gigs. Can I use Pro? No, I can't use Pro. So now I got to spend $5,000 a month on premium just to load this one model. All my other models are relatively small, right? We don't have that many people that work for our organization. We have 20 people that work for our organization. Now we got to buy a premium capacity. I'm like, well, can we look at your model? So we look at their model and we say, let's do this, people. Let's remove those columns because you don't need them. I'm going to convince you that you don't need them. And now, look how big the model is. They still need premium capacity, right? But we can do some additional optimizations to probably get it out, maybe do some aggregations and some composite models to shrink it even further. But we just remove one column, 2 columns from that model, and we reduce the size of it, right?
And it probably sped up the refresh.
Oh, they absolutely sped up the refresh. But my favorite one was Adam called me up. Adam called me up one day and he goes, hey, Patrick, you want to look at this VPAX file? And I'm like, of course I want to look at a VPAX file.
This is what we call having a good time.
This is the best. This is the best part of my day. I don't want to write emails. And so tell them what happened. Tell them what happened.
So customer call, this is back before Premium Gen 2 came out. So back in Premium Gen 1, you could only direct buy up to a P3. So if you wanted a P4 or P5, you had to call Microsoft. When you call Microsoft, you had to talk to us. And so customer, big name, we work with the world's largest customers. They call me up and they're like, Adam, we really need a P4. I'm like, no, you don't. They're like, no, really, we do. I'm like, why? And they're like, well, we're doing a POC and we've done the math and we know if we load all of the data, we will be over the size of a P3. And I'm like, all right, well, send me the VPAX file. And then I called Patrick up and Patrick, we opened it up and within 5 seconds, Patrick's just like, oh, we're done. We're done. So what we saw, this is one example of it, but we saw 3 or 4 of these local date tables inside of VPAX. Who knows what that is? Yeah, auto date time. And they had a calendar table.
With relationships
but the dates on these columns weren't using the calendar table. It was just a reference column. So they had a slowly changing dimension.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
And the way that they knew which one was the active row in the slowly changing dimension is they had an end date. And so the active one had a year of 9,999. Well, that exploded this thing up. And those 4 tables that were there accounted for 70% of the model size.
70%.
So I just told them, uncheck that box.
One
Bam.
checkbox.
Don't need a P4.
But look how many years. Look how many years
Yeah.
is in their calendar
8,000.
table. And so I'm trying to rationalize through this.
We spent the next hour, I'm like, I've heard of this, but how did this happen? And that's when we figured out it was the slowly changing dimension, but like, we were cranking out demos on like, how do I do this?
How do you do this? How do you do this?
We figured it out. I started going to, I went to like year 0, year 1. I'm like, nope, that's not
That's
enough.
not it.
And then I went the other way.
Yeah. How do you get 8,000 years? So we unchecked it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
We
uncheck the
unchecked this. But look at this. Look at this model. The model size that we kind of simulated this. It was 469 megs. These two particular tables accounted for pretty much 100% of the model. Pretty much 100%.
So I had a guy on the engineering team, they were trying to test the 1 gig limit with Power BI Pro. He's like, hey, do you happen to have like a 1 gig file? I'm like, I don't. Hang on, give me 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I added a few of these. I'm like, here you go.
So we were 460 plus megs.
Yep.
I unchecked the box, and now we're 3 megs.
Bananas.
3 megs by unchecking the checkbox.
Yeah.
So the next question that people ask, well, why is it on by default? And that's probably what a lot of people are thinking. Then why does Microsoft turn it on by default? Power BI was initially a self-service. It is. It still is, right? A self-service tool. And a lot of people aren't going to create calendars and build data where they're going to do some quick analysis.
Vast majority of people, and some of you may know these people, under their desk, they got like 4 Excel files.
That's right.
Or it's up in the cloud, this thing called SharePoint. They're like, look, I just want to put some fancy charts on there, right?
list.
Pie chart all the things.
Yep.
Right? That's what they're doing. And then we just give them this auto date time so they don't have to think about it. It's fine.
Where's your date?
What?
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
And so just be careful. If you don't need it, turn it off. Uncheck that box. And there's 2 settings that you can go check. And if you go in the options settings, you can check it out. There's tons of videos.
We got a video on it.
Out there that shows you how to turn it off. You can do it globally or locally. The last thing, and the only reason we're talking about this is because I think in the last week or the last 2 days since we've been here since Tuesday,
This question 3 times already.
this question's come up 3 times. If I have a fact table with multiple dates in it or multiple product references to product or multiple references to any one of my dimensions, what do? Do I copy that table and make another copy of it? Do I do this? What if I do this, Adam? I'm going to do this. I need the calendar again, so I'm going to get fancy.
Is this where I can use the reference in Power Query?
No.
Okay.
I'm going to do this, Adam. I'm going to get really fancy with you.
Okay.
I'm about to write real DAX.
Uh-oh.
All right?
Yeah, here we go.
Watch this. Shipped, and I can't type on this
Type
keyboard.
on my keyboard.
Calendar equals calendar.
Nope.
Jeez. Need a Surface Book.
No.
Boom. I just made a copy of my calendar table.
That was easy.
And then I'm going to make a relationship between my ship date on my fact table to that calendar table. But then everybody's looking like, what?
He's like,
What are you doing? What are you doing, Patrick?
trust him, he's a professional.
This is what I do, right? Made another copy of calendar. I'm going to go create a relationship between my ship calendar and my ship date. And then one of my report consumers come back and they go, well, Patrick, I want to see the order sales and the ship sales on the exact same line graph. And I go,
So
we
what
have
you
a
can
quandary.
do is create two different line
don't
graphs
say it.
and then like overlay them on each other and squint really hard.
Squint really hard. I said, we got a problem. We got a problem here. Don't do that.
All right.
Don't do that.
What do?
We delete this. The first thing we want to do, Adam, is delete this from the model.
Because we're in denial.
Because we're in denial, yeah. And it's really simple. Adam's already built this into the model. What you want to do is, you can see right here, and a lot of people ask this question, and I just thought it was common knowledge, is you create two relationships. One will be inactive, and then what you're going to do.
If they can,
They can't see it?
yeah, it might be.
There we go. So you create two relationships. One on the, and so it's like, which one is the active one? Well, which one do you think you'll use the most and report it? That's the active relationship. He goes, well, how do I choose?
That's the default.
That's the default one. It's the order date, maybe. You have to pick. You know what you have to do? You need to go talk to the people that's going to use the reports. I know it's scary. I know it's scary to go talk to them. It's a very terrifying thing, but you go talk to them and say, hey, which one are you going to use the most? And they go, oh, order date. Okay, that's the one I'm going to make active. The other one, you can do lots of things with this, but at its simplest and purest form, what you can do is create a measure, and your measure is going to look like this. And there's a nice little function in DAX called use relationship, and you'll override that default relationship with the active relationship. Now you have one calendar table, and now you can put both of those values on the same axis. Does that make sense? It's so simple. It's so simple. All right, Adam.
Bananas.
It's bananas.
It's bananas.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. So switching gears.
You have 5 minutes.
Okay.
No, you actually
No, I
have
don't.
15 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? All right. So we've gone through Power Query. We're shaping our data.
Yep.
We've modeled some data. So
Yep.
let's talk about the fun part, which is the reports, right? So a couple of just tips here. With working with Power BI, what we see is a lot of people tend to put a lot of visuals on the report.
Yeah, that's what it's supposed to do.
What's a lot of visuals?
More than I can consume. One.
Okay. Just the pie chart.
Maybe 5. Oh, yeah.
Just the pie
Maybe
chart.
5. Maybe more than 5.
All right.
Yeah.
How many people have more than 60 visuals on their report?
Visuals.
Understand. Yeah. How many visuals? Yeah.
Visuals.
Over 60.
On one
60
page.
on one page.
Visuals.
Yes.
Visuals.
Not with data, but visuals.
Yeah, just all, including data. Images,
Yep. Understand that slicers are visuals.
text boxes.
Yeah. So we've seen the most egregious I've seen, and
Egregious.
actually
Ooh.
the most egregious
What
I've
a
seen.
word.
I didn't actually. Let me see. I'll put it up while I'm talking here. I didn't start it up. So a customer called me up and they said my report's really slow. So I started asking questions. I'm like, oh, what's going on? Like, well, you know, we built out this report. We're migrating off of this other system, and it was this old operational report, and that's usually a trigger for me. And I'm like, how many tables did you put on this visual or on this report? They said we don't. Well, we had a couple tables, and I'm like, all right, well, how many visuals total? I'm like, we think it's 120 something. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, I don't even understand that. Can you show that to me? Because I can't even visualize that in my head. What does this look like? And so he shares his screen, and I'm looking. I'm like, what? I'm like, I count 13. I'm like, where are all the others? And he's like, well, you know, it's a big report, and so I went. Right? And it's, you know, this is sluggish, right? And what I noticed was there was this scroll bar right there. Except in his example, it was like this. And I'm like, what is that? And he's like, oh, well, you know, we've got to add everything in there, and you know, it just keeps going. And I'm like, okay, so let's go to view, and let's go to page view, and let's say actual size. Oh, not actual size. Fit to page. And I'm like, what the French toast? And I go in the report itself, you can define a custom page size. How many knew that? Why do you? That means you've done it. Why are you doing that? Oh my gosh. Thankfully, you joined this session. All right. So Canvas settings, you'll see here. I only set this to 5,000 pixels for the height. Theirs was 9,000, and it just kept going.
And it was visuals all the way.
It was all visuals all the way, all different ones. They had to shove every operational metric for the entire company on this one report page. And
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How long did it take it to render?
Yeah, I asked him. I'm like, how long does this take? It's a live connection to analysis services on-prem. I'm thinking in my head, this probably took 5 minutes. He's like, 45 seconds. I'm like, that's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good. And he's like, well, how do we fix this? I'm like, get rid of all that. I'm like, you got to break that up. No, we didn't want to do that. I'm like, I got no other answer for you, buddy. So just be mindful that visuals, the number of visuals on the page can really impact report performance. Performance Analyzer is a tool in Power BI Desktop. I recommend you all run this before you publish it to the service. And when you run this, make sure you create a blank page in the report, save the file, close Power BI Desktop, reopen it on the blank page, start Performance Analyzer, and then go to your actual report page. Now we've killed out all of the caching that's involved, so now you get real numbers for what this is gonna look like. Because you may just go, because you're using the report, and like, oh, that was super fast. Yeah, because you got the report caching, you got the data caching in place, so everything's good. So you wanna take a look at that. And sometimes you may see this other bucket that's there. The other bucket, the only way to fix this is either one, fix the bad DAX or data model that's in your system. But we had an example where a customer had 60 visuals, all of the DAX was sub-second. So I can't optimize that really. And the only thing there was the other bucket, right? And so what we had to do was reduce the number of visuals. So let's go to an example here. So we're going to go to example 1 here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start Performance Analyzer, right? And so when I do that, I'm going to hit Start Recording. So I'm on my blank page. So no cache has been, all I did was open up Power BI Desktop on the blank page. No
switch?
caching. What are you doing?
I'm going to switch.
Okay, Patrick's going to switch.
You ready?
Yeah. Right? All right.
Let me zoom.
Yeah. All right, so we can see we've got a couple visuals that are over a second. In general, this isn't like horrible. There's one that's taken over 3 seconds. So Patrick, can you expand that one out? What is that one? All right, look at this. So DAX is really fast.
Yep.
Look at the visual display. I bet that's the Azure map also. And I'm right, it's selected. So the visual display, so that's how long it took to render the actual visual. That took about a second. And then this other bucket's at like 2 seconds. How do I fix that? Well, so what I've got on this report, so we've got all the visuals. How many visuals do we see here? On the canvas, it doesn't look like that many, but if we look at Performance Analyzer, each line is a visual on my report. I've got a bunch of shapes, I've got a bunch of text boxes, right? So those are all things that are in the mix of what's going on. So think of the other bucket like a train. I like to think of it like a train. So the visuals, if you think, they don't go necessarily sequentially, so there's some batching that goes on, and there's some algorithms to help with this with performance. But think of it that some of those visuals have to wait until the ones in front of it complete. And so now they're blocked, right? And that's what's accumulating in that other bucket. So one thing I can do is make the visuals run faster, or I can reduce the number of visuals. All right, so I've got a lot of shapes here for these background. There's like white under the visuals and then this gray background. So what I did was I actually just baked all of those into a background image. So I don't have to use the shape objects, right? So it's in my background image and I use that as my starting point. So that's the only thing I've changed here. So let's do Performance Analyzer, start recording, and then see where we're at. All right, here we go. All right, so our map one is still pretty bad. Patrick, can you expand that out?
Sure.
So it's looking at about 3 seconds. No, not that. Yeah, it's the big one. No. Yep. There you go. All right, so visual display was, so other is still there, so that didn't help at all. So let's try one more thing here. So what I've got here is I've got 3 card visuals, right? And I've got 3 text boxes above it for the labels, right? Yeah. So that's 6 visuals right there.
Yeah.
So this is, I will freely admit, this is a hack, but it works. So what I'm going to do is turn this into a table visual and not use the 3 card visuals. I'm going to use 1 table visual and do a lot of tinkering. I'm not going to show you all the tinkering. It takes a little bit. But like changing the colors to like bland and like background, getting rid of the background color and then kind of sizing it up so it fits just right. And then the text boxes I have as the headers, those are just the column headers in the text box now, right? And so I can just reduce all 6 of those into 1 visual. So just doing that, let's see what we get from a game perspective.
I'm excited.
You're excited?
Yeah.
All right, I hope this works. That Azure map visual is not making me happy. All right, so we're going to start recording. Let's go. And you'll notice here, like the cards, they still look pretty good, right? It's pretty close to what it did before. But now also I've reduced a bunch of visuals as well. That Azure map visual is still making me not happy. All right, it reduced it a little bit. So, but these are things we can do. In the case, the example we had with the 60 visuals, we did this to clean up a bunch of card visuals that they had on the report. And this went from, I want to say the report rendering took about it was about 4 seconds long to render the report. And by going through this operation, we got it down to sub-second rendering on the report. So these are things you can play with to try and reduce that other bucket, try and be smart about what we're doing with visuals, right? Get them in a good spot. Let's just try and reduce what we're trying to use, right? So the tinkering, hacking, just use the tools that are available to you. Background images are amazing. The one thing I will caution on a background image, though, is don't bake text into the background image, because for accessibility reasons, that could prevent any type of like screen readers or things like that. So be kind of aware of what you're doing with it. Also, if you're using things like custom visuals, that could also contribute sometimes to performance as well from a visual perspective. So Patrick, it's not always about DAX.
It's always
in
about
data
DAX.
modeling.
It's always about DAX and data modeling.
Most of the time, it's about DAX and data modeling.
Chris Hamill, he works with us on our team. He's got a blog post, alluringbi.com.
Yep.
We should put it in the deck or something like that. And he has a blog post explaining how to take those cart visuals and put them in a table. He walks you through the steps, like, really one by one, so you can get this done.
Yep.
All right?
So those are all things we can do to improve it. So, all right.
So we got 5 minutes. Do you have more stuff?
Nope.
So we have 5 minutes left, and we intentionally did this. No, we didn't. But if you have any questions, we can hang out for 5 minutes. You can ask questions, and then we can go.
One thing I do want to highlight real quick, how many people know what the Power Hour is?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So the BI Power Hour is tomorrow after lunch. It's at 1:40. You will not learn anything intentionally in this session. It is meant to be entertaining, and we use the product in ways that the product team never imagined it to be used.
Yeah.
And I will say, Patrick and I will have an amazing announcement in the session.
We just got approval.
We got approval.
We just got approval to do this.
In the Power Hour.
Tomorrow. Sorry.
All right, so please join us if you can.
And tonight, say it, Prathi, please. The users group is tonight.
Yes.
Where?
In the auditorium at 6 o'clock.
At 6 o'clock.
Or auditorium at 6 o'clock. The local user group's going to be meeting. There's going to be a panel with some smart people, I'm assuming.
Not me. I won't be there.
So do join us tonight and then join us tomorrow for the Power Hour.
Yeah.
We would love to have you all.
Yeah.
Are there any
All
questions?
right, we got 3 minutes. Yeah.
All right,
Yes,
we got
sir.
a question right here. He's going to throw a thing at you, by the way. I would have thrown it. Yeah.
Sensitivity labels in Power BI. So if you have a stakeholder in the company and you creating financials for the stakeholder, your admin will be able to see your database, your data model, and your reports. How do you get around that?
You don't today. So the admin still has the ability to see so the question is all about if I set those sensitivity labels. I'm doing that for a reason because I don't want people to see that data, including the admin, right? And so today there is an update coming. It's on the release wave where I want to say some of the policies that you can implement from the DLP perspective that can be aligned to the sensitivity labels, I think will allow you to block it by security groups. So even though they're the admin of the workspace, if they're not in the security group that's allowed, I believe the intent of that is it will block it. So that will answer your question.
Yep.
So it's on. Look on the release wave. There's like 2 different DLP things that are coming, and then I think there's some more that will be coming next semester. So I don't know exactly when it's going to hit, but I do know it's in the works. So excellent.
Yes.
All right. Question in the back.
Well, it's something a bit similar. How do you make sure that PAI data is secure in the service?
It depends. That is potentially a long answer.
Yeah.
There are a lot of factors that are involved there, all the way down to where is your data, who's managed. That's outside of Power BI, right? How is that being managed? How's it being managed inside of Power BI? What are the paths in between? These are all things that you need to take care of.
That's a big question.
One thing I do recommend checking out is the Power BI security white paper that talks about how the service works, so you can understand some of the plumbing that's there. And then from there, start to manage the tenant and take advantage. There's documents out there about how to govern and look at the audit logs. We've got the DLP capabilities that are there with the sensitivity labels. Please use sensitivity labels if you're concerned about that. So those are all things that you need to go. It's too much for right now to go into all that. That is a very good. That could be a session all in itself. So it should be a session all in itself. So, all right, one in the back.
On query folding, in analysis services, is there an easy way for me to see what's happening with query folding in SaaS?
So are you talking about analysis services on-prem?
Azure.
Azure analysis? Well, either way, the answer is no. So what you could do, though, is potentially, because you can use Power Query in Azure Analysis Services, so use Power BI data flows, what I showed you. And then copy and paste the M script. Now, that may need to be tweaked a little bit.
I don't know if that's going to work.
I don't know if it's good. The connection information is where you might get broke, but like the transformation stuff, that should
It's just still
play around with that.
Yep.
That's what I would do.
Yep.
Cool.
One final question.
Yes.
In that wonderful nested SQL query, you get down to the bottom, you got select star from.
That's just because I hand
Is that
typed it.
just sloppy coding?
Yeah. Right. No, it's not necessarily. It is sloppy, but it's actually more the fact that I'm lazy. So.
Time's up.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Yep.